Sports Interaction, Canada Sportsbook.
Hello and welcome to Game Over Vancouver. I'm your host, Samantha Chang, and I am here today with two guests. My lovely co-host, Kaja, is here with me, and Kaja's wearing a Leafs jersey, which is, it is what it is. And we're here with Dave Barnett from Third Intermission. Thanks for joining us, Dave.
Thank you for having me. What's up? Coming to you deep from the heart of Ontario. Go Leafs, go. You know how it goes.
Canucks beat the Leafs 4-1 tonight. Even I can't complain, and I am like the biggest member of Team Tank. Before we get into it, I'm going to give a shout out to our sponsor. Want to bet? Then get in on the action at Sports Interaction. The boys of summer are back on the diamond, and March Madness is on deck. Bet pre-game, live and play, or on one of our many prop bets. Sports Interaction makes it easy to deposit, play, and cash out. Head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN, or in Ontario, download the app using the QR code at the bottom of the screen. 19 plus, please play responsibly. So, the Leafs playing their third game in 4 nights. So, I think you can call that a scheduled loss, although, I don't know that Canucks are ever anyone's scheduled loss. Canucks win 4-1, 2 shorthanded goals for the Canucks against Matt Murray, who once famously said he thought Brock Besser's goals were all lucky. What was the highlight of the game for you guys tonight?
The Tavares goal mostly, but other than that, I think that's the only thing I could say in this situation. It's kind of disappointing that we kind of just blew a tire in Vancouver. Especially against a team where they're working towards I guess the Connor Bedard sweepstakes, and yet still at the same point in time, it's like you have a team that's working towards, say, trying to catch Boston, and it's not really working. And now you have Tampa Bay on your heels with 19 games left to go. Something's got to give at this point. I mean, yes, it's only been 3 games since the deadline, or 3 games since all those trades have gone through, but still something has to give at this point. And I would love to see a little more, I guess, 12,000 grit sandpaper in this situation. Get that refined polishing as much as possible and start winning attainable games. Because if you're going to go into the playoffs hobbling like you are right now, there's going to be another first round exit, and there's going to be a lot of apathy for Leaf fans. And me being one of them, I'm probably at my wit's end here. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's certainly understandable. Also a significant job opening on the Leafs front office if they don't get past the first round this year with Kyle Dubas. Personally, highlight for my game for the game for me was seeing Luke Shen again in Rogers Arena. I was really sad when he got traded, but that's huge Luke Shen fan. I thought it was very funny that he went and laid a huge hit on Miller. Completely flattened him against the boards. I feel like it's kind of reminiscent of when they had a fight earlier, not a fight, but a verbal exchange on the ice earlier this season, heading off, and Garland had to come between them. I thought the 2 shorthanded, I was so surprised when those went in, because it's the Canucks. Obviously, we're historically horrendous on the PK, especially this year. And then somehow JT Miller decides to go X Games mode and just scores or gets an assist on the PD goal, and then the second shorthanded goal, which was his. That was absolute insanity, and I felt like that gave a jolt of energy into the game. But yeah, personally, I thought it was a close game until those 2 goals happened. But and of course the Leafs lose because it's a team that's bad, and the Leafs can never beat a team that's bad. Always, they lose to Arizona for some reason. I do think that this was a good showing of what the Canucks can do, but not what they should do for the next few games.
I think that's totally right. I can see from my screen that I'm frozen, so I apologize. for my frozen face to everyone watching. I totally agree with Kaya. I thought this was probably one of the best games I've seen them play all season, notwithstanding that the first period they were vastly outshot by the Leafs, and I maybe jumped the gun and said, this is absolutely not a team that should be gunning for the playoffs next year, although I still stand by that, notwithstanding this win. But it's been good to see them be able to put in the effort and keep up with teams that they have the last couple of games. I think Tocchet's getting a lot out of this lineup. It's probably debatable whether or not that's what they should be doing, given their overall roster construction, but there's not a lot to be unhappy about tonight, even if your team tanked, because beating the Leafs on Hockey Night in Canada is a pretty good time. Watching Andrei Kuzmenko score is a pretty good time, and definitely seeing Elias Pettersson continue to rack up his career high is a very good time. Jay Money says in the chat, Frozen Sam is better than Frozen Audie, and I will take it. Thank you.
Yeah.
What did you think? What did you guys think of Demco's game tonight?
I personally think he's looked a lot more solid since coming back. I think Dallas was I believe he was in net. He was in net for Dallas, right? I'm not losing my mind.
Yeah, he's played the last 3 games, I think.
Okay, cool. I'm not losing it. But yes, I think he's been really solid since coming back. You can probably hypothesize that his injury was still present, the one that he had surgery for over the off season. I believe that was still probably present when he was coming back, but at the beginning of the season, and then obviously is out. Now he's back. I think that has definitely he's definitely looked better at this tail end of the season where we shouldn't be playing meaningful games. I certainly was not expecting that, but apparently according to Rick Tocchet, they're meaningful. So yeah.
He did. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say he did look pretty good this evening, especially against the Leafs. More importantly, during the Leafs power play, like he was just shutting down. He was just shutting it down completely. Like Leafs weren't able to get very many good chances on him, but unfortunately, I mean that's kind of how puck luck is sometimes. It's like if you're not able to like put it past them, then you're kind of just like, okay, can you find ways to beat him? And if you can't find ways to beat him, it's like how can you get around that? And I don't think the Leafs really figured him out tonight. He did look like Demco did look really good between the pipes tonight. And unfortunately, I wish Matt Murray had did the same thing, but you know what? Like you can't always win them all, right? So
yeah, I'm with Kaya. I think Demco had a rough start to the season. Like I still remember people trying to start the debate of whether Spencer Martin was better. Take a moment to pour one out for all those people because that was a really, really stupid conversation. But Demco had a really rough start to the season, and I know I saw on Twitter that there were some Leafs fans who I think probably don't watch Vancouver very much over the years, saying like, oh, Demco's save percentage this year isn't very good, and of course he's like turning it on for the Leafs. And that's actually, for all of the third intermission fans who are here watching Dave, that's actually not a fair characterization of Demco. I think he's had a really rough season, and as Kaya mentioned, he's coming back from surgery, and I think that really slowed him down in the first half. But since coming back from his mid-season injury, he's looked back at the top of his game, and you can go ask any Vegas Golden Knights fans who watched him in the bubble. Demko is actually a very good goalie, and to the extent that he's back on his A game, I think it probably, unfortunately for team tankers, really takes them out of the Bedard sweepstakes.
I mean, who else is available on the draft board after, like, say, number one? Like, I'm pretty sure it's a deep draft this year, isn't it?
It's a deep draft.
Fantilli, from Michigan is one. Michkov, but he's on a KHL contract until like 2026. So that's a while. That's like near the tail end of OEL's contract. So yeah, to remind everyone, he's still there. He still exists. I forgot that he existed the other day, and I was like, oh right, yeah, we have him. Yeah, I think we're out of competition for the Bedard sweepstakes, considering how bad Columbus is. I think Columbus is definitely in the front runner to get him. we could have a chance potentially against like a Chicago or an Anaheim. Maybe, but I think Columbus is just too damn bad. So yeah, I think we're out of Bedard's sweepstakes, but it's like you said, it's a deep draft this year, so fingers crossed they don't get like pick number 10 or something. But I mean, even if they do, we got Vasily Podkolzin out of that. Pick 23 in 2015 was Brock Besser. Pick number 9 in 2013 was Bo Horvat. So just because we don't get first overall doesn't mean we're not getting somebody that's going to be important for the Canucks.
I will be happy with a top 5 pick. I will still be happy with a top 10, but I really want a top 5.
Quinn Hughes was 7th.
Well, I mean, we have Boston's first round pick after the trade deadline. So let's see how Boston lands in like after these playoffs, and hopefully we can get at least within the top 20. More than likely, we're probably going to see like a top, more than likely, like say between 26 and 32, depending on how well Boston does this season or during the playoff run. Kind of like in an ideal world, like I would like to see Toronto finally exercise its demons, but like that's just me being delusional here. So.
All right. If you're just joining us, we are here breaking down the Canucks 4-1 win over the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm here with my co-host Kaja and also with Dave from Third Intermission. Okay, moving on to the second segment, we're going to talk continuing storylines. And, you know, we've already alluded to this a bunch, but the Canucks were on Team Tank for a while. I think they were on a tanking mission. And then the trade deadline happened, and it didn't really seem like they were trying to tank. And then Rick Tocchet came out and said that they're playing quote-unquote meaningful games in March. Last I checked, I think they're still 26th or 27th. So I'm not sure how meaningful that is. But how did you guys feel about the trade deadline for each of these teams? How do you think the Canucks are going to do with the tank for the rest of the season? Like, tell me all your trade deadline feelings.
I'm gonna say ladies first in this situation because that's the respectful thing to do. So, Kaya, please go ahead.
All right, thank you. The Canucks trade deadline was certainly an odd one. I was a bit confused because all their seeming trades that they did beforehand, like going back to even the Horvat trade, yes, they got players in that deal, but they got a lot of picks back. They got picks back for Shen as well. For Riley Stillman, we get a prospect. Like, they're doing all of these trades. Riley Stillman also got knocked out by Tampa Bay, or by Tanner Jeannot earlier.
Saw that.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a good tilt. But yeah, so they had some things that were looking in the way of rebuilding, but then you have to think about the retooling that we've had to deal with for many, many, many years. And of course they go and they trade the first they got for Bo and a second for a fourth and Filip Hronek. Now, I get it. Not rebuilding I essentially wastes apparently the prime of you know, Hughes, Pettersson, stuff like that, because they're still young players and they're going to be good for the next few years. I understand getting Filip Hronek does help our defense quite a bit, considering it is a certain upgrade from other right defensemen, considering including the one that's like 6'8". It is certainly an upgrade from what our current defense is, which is like mostly AHLers.
The bar is underground.
The bar is underground for the Canucks, but I think that this is a step in the right direction for the defense core, which is something that has not happened for many, many years. Which I understand it does not seem like a step in the right direction for many fans, but it is going to be a step in the right direction. Hopefully, is what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, I'm with you, Kai. I think that getting a relatively young right-handed defenseman was it's a win. He's a good player. Don't love giving up a first. Although like obviously the price to get a right-handed defenseman is high, and I'm not saying he's not worth the first. It's just that for this particular team, They just shouldn't. They're not in a position where they should be giving up high draft picks, especially in what is supposed to be a generational draft. Would have loved to have seen, like give up next year's first, give up a different first than this year's. Would have loved to have seen them have 2 firsts. They just, for my liking, and I appreciate that I'm much more team rebuild than team retool. I would have loved for them to do something like the Senators and the Habs did in the last couple of years, and I appreciate that those teams are not, really doing much right now, but they're still in the process of actually rebuilding. But stocking up on like 15 to 25 picks over the course of 2 to 3 seasons is what they needed to do, is add more picks. And I think overall they're at like net roughly exactly like 7 picks a year. They actually have not added anything significant other than in later rounds. So for me, that was disappointing to see that happen again. But like you said, I will take any kind of small victory over the last few seasons. So yes, adding a defenseman was a good move overall. Dave, you from your viewpoint, I want to hear what you think about the Canucks, but also I'd love to hear your thoughts on what the Leafs' chances are in the playoffs after that trade deadline.
Okay, so going with the Canucks first, I'm not 100% familiar with how Vancouver's been doing, but like obviously, of course, the stockpiling of draft capital and everything would be a good sign of, like, I guess a good sign of Vancouver saying, okay, you know what, like, let's not go towards playoffs. Let's try and figure out what we can do and try and develop, see what we can develop over the next couple of seasons. Because let's be completely honest here, Vancouver's kind of been in a bit of a shamble over the last, give or take, 2 or 3 years. Obviously, Vancouver's front office right now is a bit of a clown show, especially with the Bruce Boudreau situation. That was not fun at all. Like, considering like that coach was like one of my favorite coaches in the entire league. Honestly, like, he didn't deserve the exit that he received. Losing Bo Horvat to the Islanders was kind of a bit of a surprise for me. Personally speaking, I felt like, Horvat should have been the guy to like literally lead you through your rebuild or your retooling. And essentially what it felt like was like Vancouver was just giving up and starting all over again. And it's kind of like just hitting the reset button completely when you're losing a game online. And that just kind of just screams like, okay, there's a whole bunch of red flags in this situation. So obviously I would like to see Vancouver get back on its feet, especially when it comes to playoff success and regular season success. Because let's all be honest here, 2011 was a wild ride, and of course, if it wasn't for a certain goaltender by the name of Tim Thomas and a whole bunch of players from a team that I refuse to acknowledge, y'all would have at least had your first Stanley Cup. So
it drives me insane that they're like the best team in the league still.
Look,
with players who played in 2011.
Massachusetts, leave them alone. I hate them with the burning passion, and like we've had to deal with them for like nearly 90 to 100 years. So I understand your pain all too well. In regards to how the Leafs, or as I would affectionately call them, the Leaf Dem, are doing, especially on like say playoff predictions and everything, we did shed a lot of dead weight, but we also picked up some players that Dubas would feel that, like, you know what, maybe they're essential towards our future. And of course, with Ryan O'Reilly and Noel Acciari, that kind of speaks volumes. Ryan O'Reilly, of course, like seems like the most definitive centerpiece on re-signing, especially with the Leafs cap woes and everything. We did clear up some cap space, but not enough significantly to the point where it's like, we can go out and get, like, say, a top 6 forward or a top 4 defenseman. Of course, Dubas has been doing everything he can to try and, I guess, focus around the core 5 of like Tavares, Nylander, Marner, Matthews, and Riley, and still be able to get decent depth players from like a bottom 6 standpoint, and still be able to accentuate the core 5 in order to be able to help build a proper team. The problem now is that like with Dubas being in his last year, this is essentially like your all-in moment at this point. And like if you play poker and you throw all your chips in, it's like like this is pretty much it. It's like it's either you're staying on the table with like a huge pot, or you're leaving with absolutely nothing. And a lot of Leaf fans feel like this is kind of like the last dance moment. Like I'm using basketball terms. If you ever seen Netflix's The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, like this is essentially how it feels. This is like 97, 98 Bulls at this point. The only difference is we don't have 6 championships. We have like 6 first round exits, and it's embarrassing enough to say the least. And for someone who has been watching for like nearly 33, 34 years, and that's nothing compared to most Leaf fans out there, like to be able to only see 4 conference finals appearances in the last 30 years, that kind of speaks heavy volumes on like how the program, like how the franchise is doing as a whole. And obviously with the recent exits from from Boston back in 2013, Washington in 2016, Boston in 2018 and 2019, Columbus Columbus embarrassingly at home in the bubble, and then losing to Tampa Bay last year. It's kind of like and of course Montreal back in 2021. It has been unceremoniously frustrating. And what I would like to see with this current iteration of this team, I know I'm taking up too much time, I apologize. What I would like to see with this current iteration with this team is them finally getting off their ass and actually figuring out what's going on with them, especially when it comes to playoff success. I hope Marner doesn't do anything boneheaded when it comes to like, say, dubious mistakes. We're stuck with Hall and Kerfoot, so now it's basically like, okay, like I'm putting all my chips on you guys. Like if you guys screw up, then like basically you're out of a job and I'm out of a job, and I'm throwing you under the bus the first chance I get, at least from Kyle Dubas's eyes. I don't know if Matthews will stick around after that, because it's like, obviously, if you're not winning, I feel like Austin Matthews will be like, okay, like within 2 years, will be like, what the hell am I still doing here? I haven't won a Stanley Cup. I've won a Hart Trophy. I feel like I can do better. I can do better elsewhere. And say, just to coin my friend Avery's words, he probably may end up going home to Phoenix. And like, that's something that Leaf fans don't want to hear, but like it may end up happening. Or you may go to like, say, somewhere like New York or Dallas. And like, obviously that is a nightmare situation for Leafs Nation in general. Honestly, at this point, like my stomach is churning just thinking about whether or not we can win a round at least. But I know we have to face the defending Eastern Conference champions again, more than likely. Toronto has to do something, and they have to do something significant in order to be able to at least get out of the first round. And if they don't do that, there's going to be a lot of burnt Leafs jerseys in the streets.
I think all of that is right. I gotta say, as somebody who is probably the only non-Leafs fan on this show tonight, Kaja's literally in an Austin Matthews jersey.
Yeah.
I thought, for what he could do, I thought Kyle Dubas had a good trade deadline. He had
trade deadline.
I remember Tuesday, I was literally at work and was like, Kyle, like, I am trying to work. Can you please calm down? Like, I cannot keep up with all the Leafs trades right now.
Honestly, and I hate to interrupt. I genuinely apologize for that.
No,
I felt that Dubas did an excellent job, at least at this deadline. He got rid of pieces that were okay, but could be better. And he did end up trading for he did end up trading for Shen. We did need say a little bit more toughness on the blue line. We did end up grabbing Eric Gustafsson as well as a first round pick, which happened to be Boston's first round pick. We picked up Ryan O'Reilly back on February 17th. Like, we were all just chilling, minding our own business on a Friday night, and Dubas is out here landing bombshells like it's nobody's business. And we're just like, okay, what's happening here? And now that, like, of course, now that we have the team that we have, Toronto has to step up at this point. Nights like tonight and nights like Wednesday against the Oilers don't really scream much confidence in Leafs Nation. But then again, I could be wrong. So,
Well, this may be unpopular with the viewers of Game Over Vancouver, but I have a very big soft spot for Tic Tac Tomar, my Zone Time co-host, and for Dave, and so and for Kaja. Although Kaja, you're getting a lot of chirps in the chat for that jersey.
I can see that. Yeah.
But I personally would actually like to see the Leafs make it out of the first round this year. I think, like it's only funny for so long. Like it's getting boring at this point. Like I would actually rather see them do something. I am a proponent of well-managed teams and like GMs who make thoughtful moves, and I think it's time that pays off rather than seeing something like the Habs Cup run where all the GMs are suddenly like, well, as long as we make the playoffs, we might go on a Cinderella run. Like I want to see a team that's actually good on paper go all the way.
I think they get out of the first round, but then they have to face Boston in the second.
Yeah, I think the problem with the East is like the East really stacked up, right? Like that was what happened at the trade deadline was all the Eastern teams stacked up and all the Western teams were just like, yeah, we'll just chill here and wait.
Like the largest trade in the West for like a few days was Jack Johnson back to the Avs for the vibes. Like that was it. Yeah. That was it.
I don't know. For me, it felt like the Jonathan Quick situation. That kind of felt like a little bit of a huge. That kind of felt like a little bit of like a huge. I guess a huge soap opera in itself, because it's like you're traded, like you're basically the backbone of 2 Stanley Cups. You're traded off to God knows where in Ohio. And then you come back to the division in Vegas, and it's just like, oh, how the turntables have turned. And you're like, if you're a Kings fan, you're probably shooting yourself right now saying like, I hope to God we don't end up playing in Vegas in the first round. Well, chances are you might, given how the Pacific Division is like literally up and down at this point. It's basically a roulette wheel of like Vegas, Los Angeles, and Edmonton. And if say Seattle catches up or Calgary catches up, then it's like, okay, you've got like a 5-way dance between these teams. And you only have like, say, enough spots for 3, if not 4 of them, depending on how many points you have left. So it is going to be very interesting in the West.
I mean, interesting in like a very different kind of way from interesting in the East.
Yeah. I mean, the East is essentially a nuclear arms race at this point.
I think the West is going to be like, it's going to depend a lot on how many of the Avs players come off IR. They've had like no update on Landeskog, no update on Johnson. Like it's totally unclear what they're going to go into the playoffs with, but I guess we'll see how that goes.
Currently, the Los Angeles Kings would be facing off against the Seattle Kraken, but that could change to the Edmonton Oilers as well. So, because Edmonton's in the first wild card spot and Seattle's in third in the Pacific, with 2 games in hand. So I'd say that is, and Calgary is far out from Colorado.
Yeah, Calgary's had a crazy disappointing season, I think.
I know. Like the only good thing they have going right now is like, and like I'm also a closet Flames fan, but don't go telling people in Ontario about that. Like I've loved the Flames since 2004, Jerome McGinley days. I would have loved for them to at least try and build off of what they were doing last year, and of course with the addition of Nazem Kadri, like I felt like, you know what, hey, maybe Calgary can actually make a deep run this year. And unfortunately, you're 5 points out of a playoff spot. So unless they do something drastic within the next few weeks, I'd say they're going to be on the outside while looking in.
Yeah, it certainly looks that way. If you're just joining us, we're coming to the end of our show. The Canucks beat the Leafs 4-1 tonight. 2 shorthanded goals from JT Miller and Elias Pettersson. Another goal for Andrei Kuzmenko, who's 1 away from 30 goals on the season. And let's close off with Luke Shen. I know Luke Shen is one of Kaja's faves. And so I also know that for literally weeks, I've had Omar, TikTok Omar, just texting me being like, I want Luke Shen. Like, would you take a lightly used Alex Kerfoot? I was like, absolutely not. I do not want Alex Kerfoot. Were you thrilled to get Luke Shen? I'm going to start with Dave.
I was over the moon. I was very happy to see that he finally gets a second chance with the Leafs. Apparently the running story was that, like, say him and Riley were only on the same team for one day, and then Shen got traded the next day. It was like Riley gets drafted. It's like, oh, okay, cool. We have two great defensemen. And then Shen gets traded off to Philadelphia. And it's like, okay, fine. Now we're stuck with Riley. I believe Kaja said this correctly, but it's been approximately 3,891 days since Shen was a Leaf. And of course, with Shen's experience throughout the league, of course, him winning 2 Stanley Cups with Tampa Bay, and then going to Vancouver, playing under Quinn Hughes for a good year and a half, and now he's come home to be a Leaf. I'm very excited to see how well he fits into the Leafs lineup, especially as one of our, like, say, and like in a pairing with, like, say, potentially Mark Giordano or Morgan Riley or even Eric Gustafsson if he's actually inserted into the lineup. Possibilities are endless in the situation. Just as long as he's not stuck with Justin Hall, that's fine by me. Like,
Hall had a great game, like, nice little assist on that Kuzmenko goal.
I understand that, like, a lot of people say, like, Hall's actually a decent defenseman, and, like, I agree with that. It's just I pick on this kid kind of like the same way I pick on Jake Gardner or Brian McCabe back in the days. Like, these guys were, like, basically, like, the easiest people to pick on, and especially when it came to Leafs defensemen. Unfortunately, Hall's in the line of fire at this point.
That's fair.
Like, don't get me wrong, I love the guy, but, like, I also love to hate the guy. So like some of his boneheaded moves, like, really do stick out more than, like, his great play. So I think that's kind of where I'm at in this situation. But hopefully he can get his head right, and we can actually have him along with Shen on a defensive pairing, and hopefully they don't cough up as many goals as possible. But that's just me having wishful thinking in this situation.
How is it for you, Kai? Is it bittersweet?
It certainly is bittersweet a bit. It hurts because, like, I like the Leafs, but also, like, I wanted him to stay in Vancouver because he just had that effect. I feel like for the team, especially in the decor, especially with, like, young defensemen, like Quinn Hughes recently said that losing Shen would be like losing Chris Tanev back in the day. Yeah, it hurt a bit. Yes, I'm glad he went to the Leafs. Yes, he gets to play in playoff hockey for the Leafs for the first time in a Leafs jersey. Sorry, Dave, but
None taken. Don't worry. Honestly, I've been dying to see him, like, literally tear it up in the playoffs as a Leaf.
yeah.
So hopefully we get that chance finally.
Yeah, he apparently said that he wants he wants his third cup to be with the Leafs. So hopefully he gets there. Would I love to see him come back potentially in free agency? Yes. Do I see it happening? Probably not, but I hope he stays with the Leafs in case, because, yeah, that was the team that drafted him. It's a good full circle moment considering he's played in so many different organizations over the years. Toronto, Philly, LA, Arizona, Anaheim, Vancouver, Tampa Bay, back to Vancouver, and now back to Toronto. It feels like a full circle moment, but he did break a record with us about for his hits, so that's what I'm proud of.
Yeah, I said before that trade happened that what I would like is for Shen to win his third cup and then come back to the Canucks. I'm not going to back out of that now just because he's with the Leafs, so I do hope that happens. But we'll see. If you're still here with us, the Canucks win 4-1 tonight. We will be back on Monday. They take on the Nashville Predators, and hopefully it will be a great game where they lose and pick up 0 points.